Welcome back to GSMC's Down by Contact Sports Podcast. I'm your host, Jeremy Lapidus. Today is Wednesday, March 19th. If you were just tuning in, we just finished going over the second game of the two-game series played in Japan by the MLB between the Dodgers and the Cubs. In this segment, we continue our baseball coverage, looking at what the Mets did this offseason. They were busy handing out over $1 billion in combined value over contracts. Of course, a lot of that went to one man. We're going to talk about that in a second, but before we do, remember, if you are going to be an even bigger part of the show than you already are, all you need to do is go to gsmcpodcast.net. Or if you're on YouTube, you can use that super chat feature. If you do either of those two things, a message should pop up on the bottom of the screen for you, me, and everybody else around the world to see. If you do have a burning question about sports, anything at all that you would like to ask, go ahead and throw that in the comments. Throw it in the chat. I will get to it as soon as I possibly can. I appreciate everybody so much for sticking around, talking some sports with me here on a beautiful Wednesday, March 19th. But like I was saying, we are going to get into a little bit here on the New York Mets. The New York Mets had a busy offseason after a busy postseason. They finished last year going 89-73. They were a last-minute addition to the playoffs, third in the NL East, but they made it all the way 2 games short of the World Series, losing 4-2 in the NLCS to the Dodgers, taking care of business in Milwaukee with a Pete Alonso basically walk-off home run to come back from an 0-1 deficit to win 2-1 in the wild card series, and then they took care of the division rival Braves 3-1 in the took care of the division rival Phillies, I should say, in the NLDS. Over $1 billion, like I said before, were given out in contracts to this team. A lot of that went to one man, Juan Soto. Juan Soto helped lead the New York Yankees to the World Series last year and is the highest priced free agent in the history of sports. 15 years. $765 million. That is $51 million a year for Juan Soto. And you know what the crazy part is? He is worth each and every single penny of that. He is just 25 years old. He's going to be there through his prime. He is amazing. They're going to be a much better team. But along with him, they also were able to bring back Mr. Met himself, Pete Alonso, on a 2-year, $54 million deal, $27 million a year for him, bringing Clay Holmes, who was the closer, back-end bullpen guy for the Yankees last year, but has some starting experience to be a starter. I really like that move. I think Clay Holmes can be a solid starter. 3 years, $38 million for him. They also brought in some more starting pitching help. Frankie Montas, 2 years, $34 million. Sean Manaea, bringing him back on a 3-year, $75 million deal. Some help for the bullpen. Bringing in A.J. Minter from the Braves, 2 years, $22 million to be a setup man for Edwin Diaz. They've got Ryan Stanek coming back on a 1-year, $4.5 million deal, as well as re-upping on the bench bats. Jesse Winker, 1 year, $7.5 million after acquiring him at the trade deadline from the Nationals last season. Nick Madrigal on the infield guy, an infielder to be a utility guy, 1 year, $1.35 million, and some more starting pitching depth with Griffin Canning on a 1-year, $4.25 million deal, and Jose Urania on a minor league deal signed just recently because they've been dealing with some injuries to the pitching staff. When you take a look at that pitching staff, it's the weakness of this team. Right now, Sean Manaea, Frankie Montas, both injured. They're gonna swipe back in when they can. But without them, you're looking at a rotation of Clay Holmes, who I like, but hasn't really had a lot of starting experience in the MLB, Kodai Senga, David Peterson, Taylor McGill, and Griffin Canning. These are not guys that you want to rely on long-term, but this is also a team that, outside of the rotation, when you look at the bullpen, is amazing. So if they can survive the first couple innings and get to the end, you got Edwin Diaz, one of the best closers in baseball. A.J. Minter, an excellent setup man. Jose Budo, at the other setup, you've got Ryan Stanek, Reed Garrett, Danny Young, Max Karanik, and Paul Blackburn in the bullpen as well. This is a very good Mets pitching staff in the bullpen. The one weakness with them, like I've said, is in their rotation. But that they weren't done acquiring people. They went out and made a big trade as well. They brought in outfielder Jose Siri from the Rays, giving up relief pitcher Eric Orz to Tampa Bay. Jose Siri's speed, defense, and a little bit of bat is going to be another big addition to this lineup. I'm very excited to see how he fits in New York. But it wasn't all addition. Obviously, they lost a couple pieces as well. They lost a couple key starters, including Joey Lucchesi, key pitchers, I should say, Joey Lucchesi, Adam Ottavino, Jose Quintana, and Luis Severino. All of these guys had pretty solid innings for the Mets last year. They also lost a couple bats that were pretty big for them. JD Martinez was a guy that was huge for them in the middle of the season. Jose Iglesias, their second baseman that they picked up, a little bit of a pop star too, but he stepped up and was a source of just vibes, really, for a Mets team that was built off of that last season. And Harrison Bader, a solid outfielder out of the Big Apple. Still a really solid team. We look at that rotation. You've got runner-up to the MVP, Francisco Lindor, leading off. You've got third place at MVP voting in the AL, Juan Soto in right field, Pete Alonso at first base, Brandon Nimmo, Mark Vientos, who really stepped up big at third base in the playoffs. At DH, you've got Jesse Winker, Starling Marte, whoever you want to put there. You could put Jeff McNeil when he comes back from injury. This is a very deep batting team. Jose Siri in center field, another place you could put a guy like Starling Marte. Brett Beatty at second base, a young guy. Luis Angel Acuna behind him as well. They're dealing with injuries to Francisco Alvarez, their starting catcher, but they've got Luis Torrens down there for now. Alvarez is going to be a big part when he does come back, but this is a solid lineup, up and down that order. There is not really a place of weakness that I look at when I look at this Mets lineup. Of course, Lindor and Soto are constantly an MVP running, right? That's a deadly 1-2 punch. Pete Alonso, one of the best pure power hitters that we've seen in a long time. He's very good. You've got Jose Siri. I love him hitting seventh. When you get Francisco Alvarez back, you pair him up with Mark Vientos and Brett Beatty down there in the middle. This is going to be a very dangerous team, which is why Vegas is projecting them to win 90 games. That is good for the fourth most as far as Vegas projections go. Only behind the Phillies, the Braves, both in their division, and the Dodgers, which is wild that the NL East has 3 of the top 4 projected in all of baseball, not just the MLB. This is a very, very good Mets team, but I don't think they've got enough to win the division. They should make the playoffs again. Bringing in a guy like Juan Soto is going to help this team. They won 89 games last year. I think just without having that starting pitching, it's really going to hurt this team. I like Clay Holmes, I like Kodai Senga, but outside of them, they don't really have guys that I think I can really rely on, and the rest of that division is really good. You talk about the 2 of the 3 teams ahead of them in their division, the Braves and the Phillies, they got better. The Braves continue to add talent simply just by getting healthy. The Phillies went out and continued to add depth to that rotation. They continued to add depth to that lineup. It's a very dangerous team, and I think because of that, they're going to do a very similar thing that they did last season. I'm going under on the Mets at 90.5. I'm putting them at 87 wins this year. Still enough to make the playoffs, but a little bit tight there, just like last year. This is a great Mets team. Adding Juan Soto only is going to make them better in the long run. But this year, I think there's just too much going on in their division in the NL, and it's going to be very, very tough to win. But I'd love to hear your thoughts. What do you think the Mets do this offseason? What do you think the Mets do this year as the MLB season is right around the corner? I'd love to hear your thoughts. And thank you, everybody, so much for tuning into today's episode of GSMC's Down by Contact Sports Podcast. I have been your host, Jeremy Lapidus. We will be back tomorrow. March Madness begins then. We'll be previewing all of the Friday games. We'll be going over some of the Thursday games that have already happened and much more. I'll see you then. Bye-bye.
Let's go. I wake up to a little bit of drool on my pillow, feel like it's gonna be a bad day. Yeah, I'm tired of shit, and the coffee ain't hit yet, damn, ain't that great. I don't wanna go to